Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we are post NATO summit in Vilnius. We got some things to talk about. Life is not going real well for Vladimir Zelensky. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and let's go back to something. People often accuse me of being too optimistic. Garland, you're too optimistic. We're all doomed, and I'm not saying that we're not, because theoretically we are all doomed. The day you're born, you're doomed to death. Just like someone, it's like you went before a judge and were condemned to the death penalty. That is true, but when I try to evaluate the conflict, I am not doing so out of fear. I'm trying to evaluate things and I don't know, do I look for an optimistic perspective? Maybe. I don't know. I don't really know. But I know a while back, the discussion has been for some time. At what point, at some point, NATO will have to make a decision, and NATO will make a decision to either get in the conflict, and then we're all doomed, and blah blah blah. And my position was, and heard me say it once, you've heard me say it a million times, the safe bet is always consistency. You are what your record says you are. And my position for a long time has been that the U.S. at some point will get the hell out. Not that. I mean, yes, this is different. Yes, the neocons have staked everything on this, blah, 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 blah. But what happened in Vietnam? And let me be very, very clear. I guess post Vilnius summit, post NATO summit, this is let me be very clear of I'm saying that the neocons getting into this will continue with their record of history, that the outcomes of historical record will continue, such as Vietnam. The neocons went in. We're going to go in here. We're going to stop the communists. We're going to defeat the North Vietnamese army. And then we're going to have a nice vassal state. They lost. And when they left, the communists were in charge. They went into Afghanistan. We've got to defeat the Taliban, and we're going to beat the crap out of them. And then we're going to have a nice vassal state right there as China. Russia's right there. We're right in the central part of where we want to be. We're right on the edge of Eurasia. We got it made. And they left. And when they left, the Taliban was back in charge, right? So based on that, here's what I'm going to say. At some point, they're going to do what they did in Vietnam. They're going to do what they did in Afghanistan. They're going to get the hell out. And when they do, Russia will be in charge, because they went in and they said, we've got to stop Russia. Russia can't possibly have anything here. Russia's got to be out. And historically speaking, whoever they say they must defeat, and this entity must not be in power in this region, state, whatever the case, defeats them and takes power in that region or state. This is not hard. I'm not some great philosophical genius. I'm not some soothsayer. I'm not some guy who's peering into the future. I'm peering into the past. And this is what they've done time and time again. And this is what they're going to do now. And they've already started. They have already started. And they put some puppet in charge. Gotta have my morning coffee here. And they're not much on their puppets. They don't like their puppets. You got to watch being a puppet. And I'll tell you why. If you got a bunch of people and they get some traitor, in that which the U.S. empire always looks for the traitor, and they get some traitor, they really don't respect the traitor. They really can't stand it. They look at him and they're like, thanks, you're useful, but we really don't trust you, because if you would backstab your own people, you sure wouldn't do much for us. We don't trust you in the long run, so that it never works out well for the traitor. Let me ask you a question. Where's Juan Guaido these days? How's things working out for the real president of Venezuela? What happened? They bring this guy out. They march this clown out. If you remember, there was a State of the Union address. They bring him in. He's the president of Venezuela. Everybody, they all do this. They stand up. They do a standing ovation. The guy's an idiot. But he's a puppet idiot. So they stick him out there. He launders money. He's good for the money laundering machine. He works for the regime change machine. And at some point, he outlived his usefulness. Venezuela, has oil. They needed the oil because of the Russian sanctions. So they're like, Juan Guaido, this thing's played out long enough. See ya, wouldn't want to be ya. The last I saw of Juan Guaido, and a lot of people here might have seen the video, he was wandering through a damn airport by himself. No security, no nothing, flying commercial in Miami, getting out of the airport, wandering around. Nobody waiting for him, no black cars, no State Department, no standing ovations, Juan Guaido, no standing ovations for you. That's Juan Guaido. That is, if Zelensky is very, very fortunate, he can thank his dear and fluffy Lord if he ends up getting off of a commercial airliner in Miami and wandering around, because his problem is he knows too much. And when you're dealing with these mafioso types, the Bidens, Blinkens of the world, and the guy who is in the worst position is the one who knows too much. Sure, you can promise them you won't talk. Sure, you can say to them, no, I promise, Joe, I'll never say a word. And they'll put their hands around your shoulder. They'll tap you on the shoulder, and they'll tell you how much they trust you, how much faith they've had in you, how much, they still support you and they love you. You're dear to them, just like a son, in fact. And then they'll invite you to walk around back and look at the flowers. Hey, man, we got some nice flowers. Would you like to see them? Sure. Yeah, come on around back and take a look at the flowers. Juan Guaido, Freudian sleep. Zelensky, let me give you a piece of advice. You don't want to look at the flowers. Just saying this, don't go. If they tell you we want to look at the flowers, go in the other direction. Never, ever go look at the flowers, okay? I'm just saying that. I'm not saying what could, may, or likely will happen if you start looking at the flowers. I'm just going to give you that advice. Don't do it. Because Zelensky is getting dangerously close to a look at the flowers moment. Real, real close. Where that came from was, a lot of people don't know that there was a great show, a brilliant philosophical show called The Walking Dead with zombies in it. And in one of the instances, there was a young girl, and she apparently was mentally ill. And she was, and so that you got these people who are, they're living after a zombie apocalypse, and they're wandering around trying to survive. And there's other humans trying to kill them, and zombies trying to eat them. All these terrible things going on. And they get this one girl who's in their little group, and she's kind of mentally ill, and she's doing things that are obviously going to make the rest of her little crew, put them in much greater danger, thinking she can make friends with the zombies, making noise when she shouldn't make noise. And they all come to the realization that she's a liability. And while in fact, in the real world, the issue of, looking out for her as a mentally ill person is critical and important, and you have to look out for her and be fair. Post-zombie apocalypse, where it's eat or be eaten, where it's live or die, where it's survival, she was a liability. And at some point, they asked her to look at the pretty flowers. And she looked at the pretty flowers. And that was her last sight. She was a liability. She looked at the flowers. So I'm just saying, at some point, poor old Zelensky's going to get a pretty view of the flowers. Now, there's numerous ways they could execute their dastardly and diabolical deed. Yes, but from a perspective of how it goes down, we will refer to it as a look at the flowers moment, and he better be worried about looking at the flowers. So what happened? What precipitated Garland to go in this direction? As just historically, you know what I said. They ain't going in. They ain't ever going in. The neocons do not go in for their puppets. You are there. I mean, that's the idea of a proxy army. That's the idea of putting somebody in front of you. They're using Ukrainian bodies to execute their strategy. And Europeans, you poor schlumps, They're using your economy, your culture, your history, your industry. Same thing. There's no difference. The Europeans who are looking at the Ukrainians shaking their heads saying, oh, you poor bastards. Oh, it's terrible what they're doing to you. Yeah, you're in the same basket. You're just right now, they're using your everything. Look at France. It's a friggin' on fire. Look at the UK. It's an impoverished hellhole. I mean, Europe's just falling apart. Europe's done. And the neocons are doing the same thing, just in a little different way. There's not the level of violence that they're using against the Ukrainians to throw them into a bunch of friggin' minefields. But an economic minefield is perfect for the Europeans because they're just wandering right into it. Hey, here's the blue and yellow flag, and there's an economic minefield. And the Europeans are like, yeah, give me that blue and yellow flag, and let's go burn some Tolstoy and Dostoevsky books, and then we'll go say that the Russians can't sing at an opera anymore. You know, they're doing like some war on Russian culture. Little do they know, the ruling elites have a war on European culture. How ironic is that? How ironic is that? That the ruling elites are executing a war on European culture, and they're hoodwinking and bamboozling the Europeans to think that they're involved in a war on Russian culture. And Russian culture seems to do pretty good. Russians kind of slam the door. Russians like, hey, we got our culture. We ain't buying into that crap of you. We got our culture. We're happy with our culture. And the other thing about the Russians are they're not going around the world overthrowing a bunch of countries, colonializing a bunch of countries so that the people of those countries have to come back from Russia. Nope. New slaves, no, none of that stuff. The Russians just kind of want to do their stuff. They want to drink their vodka. They want to eat their borscht and chill out, drink their pear soda, their duchesse and their kvass and things of that nature. And, do what they do. They're not in and wandering around the world taking over everything. Now, if you come to their doorstep, they will beat the bloody hell out of you. But as long as you don't come to their doorstep, they ain't messing with you that much. Or the Europeans now, the poor European people are facing the end of their economy, the end of their culture, the end of everything. It's over, game, set, match. And they voluntarily did that. So realistically, I would say this. If you voluntarily give it all up to the neocons, then I don't know, I guess that maybe actually in a really interesting kind of way, that is the destruction of your economy and the destruction of your culture is as a result of your culture, as a result of a culture that says, I will follow these diabolical, evil neocon ruling elite leaders right down the path of hell. Look, if you've got a leader, like for instance, the people right here in this chat, right? You guys, right? And us. The people that are in this conversation. We're not the kind of people that when our leaders say, hey, go over there and slam your head into that tree, that we're going to slam our head in the tree. They're going to have to drag us kicking and screaming. We're going to fight the whole way. And we're going to tell everybody else, don't do it. Don't listen to them. They're corrupt. We're the kind of people that are going to push back against the corrupt ruling elite, right? But we got a bunch of people who they'd just be happy to go slam their head into a tree. So if you're the kind of person that if your leader says, walk over there, slam your head into a tree and you'll do it, your head should be slammed into a tree. That makes sense to me. It's a natural result of your sheepishness. Your sheepishness, sheep are here to get sheared, right? They scare you with the scary Russians over there, as Malcolm X said. They're bad and they're horrible and you'll never support them. So they create a ghastly alternative. Oh my God, the Russians are over there. We've all got to fight to stop them, but you ain't getting nothing out of it. Ever, never, you get nothing out of it. So where we are now post NATO is, and I wonder how the European support, the blue and yellow flag waving schlumps are digging into this one. How are they dealing with this one? Because what happened? Let's look at the picture. Let's look at the picture. This is the beginning of the look at the flowers moment for our boy Zelensky. Let's take a peep at our boy Zelensky and see what the situation looks like for him. Now, you may notice in this picture that some enterprising young person has added a mop and a mop bucket. And we've seen everything. We've seen them add shoe shine stuff, everything. But I think it's critical to look at this. I've reviewed it in other videos, but now we're going in another direction. And that is simply look at this guy. He's being humiliated. He's being, and here's what I would call it. They're putting Zelensky in his place. They're putting him in his place. One of the things that happened, if you that has happened here, they're putting him in his place. Look at the look on this guy's face. And you know, I mean, his clothes don't even fit. He looks like Tony Blinken wearing a suit. He really does. He looks like a Tony Blinken suit. Tony Blinken suit. The pants are always 4 inches too long. Tony Blinken has the worst tailor in history. You know what I think? Tony Blinken must have arranged for this particular outfit for you don't believe me? Give me a second here. You don't believe me? Watch this. Watch this. Let me find it. Let me find it. I'll show you in a second. Tony Blink. There we go. There we go. Watch this. I got it now. Voila. Look at those pants there. Tony Blinken's pants. Not only are they too long, one leg is longer than the other. Look at this guy. This one, you notice the wrinkles on the right leg. Of course, we now know that this Malala person is a total psyop. Might not have been at first, but now she is. Now I think she was the one that got shot by the Taliban or something. That's terrible for going to school. You know, feel horrible for her. But now Blinken's going to use her. I mean, I would say this to Malala? Blinken and crew right now are holding money that Afghanistan actually owns, holding it back and starving the Afghans. So how can you stand with this goal? But look at his left leg. That's about 3 inches too long. Right leg, excuse me. That's about 3 inches too long. And look at his left leg. It's about 4 or 5 inches too long. The guy's literally, his suit, the legs are too long, but one of them is longer than the other. How pathetic is that? So that's the Tony. And look at that. His suit is wrinkled. I mean, I hate to be, but this guy looks like a disaster. Who's his tailor? Come on. So now let's go observe him. And we're going to go back. I'm just going to let you see it while we're here. And we will go back to our boy, Mop Bucket Zelensky. And there we go. Look at this. Look at that. Look at that. And in fact, I think the left leg might be a little longer than the right leg. So I think we got the same thing here. We got the Tony Blinken look. You make the legs too long and you make one of them longer than the other. Now, if you look at this guy, he doesn't have a tie on. His stuff looks like it's issued khakis. It's a janitor. It is a janitor's uniform, and they're treating him like a janitor. Look at that. They're treating him like a janitor. And he has a look on his face. Now, here's the other thing. Look around. The other guys are clean shaven, got a nice haircut. One guy has a beard. It looks good, clean shaven. Everybody's looks good. This guy's standing there in a janitor's uniform, work boots on. I mean, work boots. You got on work boots or brogans, whatever. I guess it's all issued. It looks like they took him down to the Ukrainian military's quartermaster's office and said, what are the raggediest crap that we have back there? I mean, come on. You could have a nice uniform. You could have something on epithets or something on that. They take him down to the quartermaster's office and deliberately say, what is the wrinkliest? We don't want an officer's uniform. Who's the guy that sweeps the floor, that cleans the toilets? Oh, that's old Bob. Hey, does Bob have any extra uniforms? Yeah, but they'll never fit Zelensky. That's even better. Put him on him. So they put him on old Bob, the janitor's uniform. And now there he stands with the mop bucket and mop in hand, getting humiliated. What an embarrassment. Oh, how far Zelensky has fallen. Oh, what we look like when we fall from grace. We fall from the leader of a country. Let me ask you this. Have you ever in your life seen a leader of a country looking like that? You know why? Because he was never the leader of the country. He was an actor. He was a puppet. And now he was an actor and a puppet. And he was an actor who was acting like a puppet. He wasn't supposed to be acting like a leader. You know, we saw these green screens where he's standing there talking about how they're going to defeat the Russians. They're going to drive them out of wherever the hell. They're going to beat them. The Russians are fighting with shovels. They're running out of missiles, all this kind of stuff. And what we've seen is this: slowly but surely, bit by bit, inch by inch, the Russians have just chipped away. They fought the way they fought. Some people are angry. They're not moving fast enough. They're not attacking enough. That ain't the way the Russians fight. Slowly but surely, they sit back and they heave shrapnel at you, artillery, mortars, whatever the hell, slowly, bit by bit. And sooner or later, you end up standing in front of the leaders of Europe with a stinking mop bucket and a wrinkly janitor's uniform on. At some point, this outcome was inevitable. It was at some point, through all of the rhetoric, through all of the NAFO trolls on Twitter who told us that the Russians were a bunch of idiots and Putin was a crap hole and jerk and all that, for all of the attacks that they made on us, who said perhaps we should look at this thing a little closer and, you know, use some actual use our brains here to evaluate what's going to happen. No, they just attacked us night and day. Through all of that, at some point, this was inevitable, and here we are. And I would say this, historically speaking, and when books are written, if I was going to write a book about that, the book would start in 2008. In Bucharest, where there was a summit, and the U.S. said to Georgia and Ukraine, at some point, we're going to let you in. Now, think about this historically. A lot of people don't know these things. 2008, April, Bucharest, the U.S. empire, forget NATO, there's no such thing, says to Georgia, says to Ukraine, hey, man, you guys are going to be allowed into NATO at some point, and we're going to be there to bring you into NATO. Now, August of that same year, Georgia got froggy at, of course, the behest of the U.S. empire and said, ha, 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 we're going to beat up on the Russians in South Ossetia. And they attacked the Russians, and the Russians beat the hell out of them. And let me ask you this, if anybody remembers that conflict, did NATO intervene? Did NATO head over to Georgia? Did Biden send the 101st Airborne? Did they fly strategic bombers in and bomb the Russians? What, they didn't do a damn thing. They didn't do a damn thing. They coaxed the Georgians into putting their necks on the line. They literally attacked the Russians. The Georgians literally, of all things, what has Georgia got, like 6-7 million people? And they attacked the Russians. Not a wise move, I would think, in my opinion. I mean, just if you're mathematically speaking, probably ain't going to work out well for you. But they did it. And they got their butts stomped into the ground and humiliated and sent home. And I guarantee you, what was the guy's name? Saakashvili or whatever. Good and damn well that the Georgians thought to themselves, oh, we got to do this, and NATO will rush in to save us. NATO didn't come. NATO never comes. It ain't what they do. They throw you out there to get slaughtered. 1991, after the Gulf War, after the U.S. Attack on Iraq, they said in northern Iraq, they said to the Kurds, all you have to do is attack Saddam Hussein's forces and we'll come to your aid. And the Kurds were like, really? You'll come to our aid? They were like, oh, you can count on us. We got you, man. We're down. You just go ahead and you attack him. We got your back. And they said, okay, great. They then revolted. They attacked on behalf of the U.S. Not a wise move. They attacked Saddam Hussein's forces. Of course, Saddam Hussein's forces had superior firepower, being that they were the sovereign government. They came in and they mowed these people down. Would attack copters in machine guns. They just wiped them out. And the Kurds were like to the U.S., all right, time to come in. And the U.S. was like, oh, yeah. Oh, man. I would certainly come in. That's like what we want to do. But right now, we got to cut the grass on the White House lawn. And as soon as we do that, we'll give you a call. We got to, trim the flowers. We got the rose garden and all that kind of stuff. I think we've got an aphid infestation on some of the flowers. Those darn aphids, they'll just eat all the petals right off. So as soon as we get finished with our gardening stuff like that, we'll come check on you and we'll give you a hand with this Saddam Hussein mowing you down with machine gun stuff. They never got finished cutting the grass. They were too busy with the aphid infestation on the petals of the roses in the rose garden. They did what they did. They sent the Kurds out there. They pumped them up to fight Saddam Hussein's army. They got mowed down and they went on to the next thing. And guess what? That's what they did to the Georgians. What do you think they're going to do? I know there's a fear. People are afraid. Oh my God, they're going to, and then we'll be in World War III. Oh no, Biden just sent 3,000 people. He might as well have sent the pictures of 3,000 people. 3,000 people. The Russians are sitting there with 500,000 people on the right there in Ukraine. 3,000 guys. What are they going to do? Serve drinks to the Russian army? They sure ain't going to fight them. The 101st Airborne is in Poland, right? What are they? 10,000 people, lightly armored. What are they going to do? What is Biden going to do? Okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, 15,000. And he just sent another 3. And we take the entire British army, 25,000, hell, throw them in. What the hell? They got 40. You know what I mean? If you start putting together the resources that NATO can bring to bear in Ukraine, it don't amount. What is the New York City Police Department has like 25,000 officers. Basically, the New York City Police Department. I don't think they're standing up against the Russian army. And I don't think any general on this face of this planet is going to say, how many men we got there? Oh, we got 50,000 people to go up against the Russian army on the Russian border in Ukraine, where 500,000 minimum Russians are amassed, where the Russian Air Force is sitting right there on the other side of the border, laying low. And the rest of the Russian army is everywhere. And they're sitting there waiting because they're concerned that they may be attacked by NATO. And we're going to send 50,000 men into that wood chipper. Ain't none of them coming out alive. And then what do? Do you stick a gun in your mouth? So the bottom line is, if they went to the Pentagon and said to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, we can muster 50,000 people. You think we can go up against the Russians in Ukraine? They'd say, well, that's not an option. So it ain't happening. This is performative. This is now that they've humiliated Zelensky. And now that the hawks and the perhaps the Europeans are starting to say we've been had. Everybody's starting to wake up and say we've been had. So Biden's going to send 3,000 people there for ceremonial purposes so that he can argue that we're doing something, we're acting. We sent 3,000 people, more people for Operation European Shield or something. That's what they got. They got narratives. These 3,000 people might as well be on Twitter. They might as well be sitting somewhere. They would actually be far better to take these 3,000 soldiers that Biden are sitting and put them in front of a screen somewhere and have them tweet. Have them join NAFO trolls or something like that. They would be far more effective than they will be sending them over to Europe. What are they going to do? They ain't going in Ukraine. It ain't an option. NATO does not have the military wherewithal to do it, and I do not believe, based on historical context, that they're going to do something different that they've ever done in the past. So what we got now is Zelensky. Let's talk about this guy. Let's talk about Zelensky for a second. The servant of the people. What happened with Zelensky before we go any further? He was a clown. He was an actor. He was a comedian. And I love comedians. I respect comedians. Comedians are awesome, right? Many times they're philosophically, they're brilliant minds. And they can see through the crap, which means as a comedian, he's no dummy. He can see through this stuff. He knows damn good and well what he's doing, right? So apparently Zelensky was the star of a TV show, a comedian, a show called The Servant of the People. And he was like a teacher. And what they did was they made this show where a teacher becomes president of the United States. And oddly enough, the teacher wanted to take Ukraine into EU and NATO and all of the things that the US wants. So interestingly enough, a show appears in Ukraine, and that TV show is exactly what NATO wants. One could almost look at that and say the CIA created that damn show, that it was a CIA operation called Servant of the People. A little bit of further evidence of that. When election time came around, a new party appeared funded by Kolomoisky, the same guy that funds the Azov Battalion. He owns owned like a really large TV network in Ukraine. Billionaire, and likely, in my opinion, likely connected to organized crime. And so a new party appears, and the name of that party is the Servant of the People Party. Isn't that interesting? A comedy comes up, a sitcom, and it has Zelensky doing exactly what the CIA would want him to do. And then magically, a party appears, and that party has it's called the Servant of the People Party, and Zelensky is their candidate, and he runs. And guess what he runs on? Peace. He runs and says, I'm going to end the war in Donbass. I'm going to end the war. I'm going to bring this thing back. We're going to have a peaceful and an economically successful country. And he gets 75% of the vote, which shows that the Ukrainian people, like all people, want peace, right? They want to go back to their lives. They want this crap over. Zelensky runs. Shortly after, he does a U-turn, shockingly, and then he becomes the CIA neocon puppet that they want, and he pushes drags this country into the depths of hell. That's the story of Zelensky. So it's clear to me, you may feel otherwise, that the guy was a CIA op from the very beginning, that the whole Servant of the People show, Servant of the People Party, and his platform for peace and all that crap, which lasted a couple months, that was all a CIA operation. It was all a Western CIA MI6 thing to hoodwink the people in Ukraine. So he becomes the head guy, and then from then on, he's just a puppet. And now he goes about doing what he's told to do. And let me just show you where we are now. And this is how it goes. And there's where we are now. There's the Servant of the People. I will say this, calling him the Servant of the People in this particular picture is the perfect name. That's metaphorically, everything works. He's serving the people. The question is, which people does he serve? He doesn't serve the people of his country. He serves, look at that. Man, this guy, you would almost think of Macron, former Rothschild banker, right? Didn't he also work for Citibank or Goldman Sachs? I think it was Goldman Sachs, Rothschild. What difference does it make, right? So you see all of these people running around here. There's the president of Poland. One after the other. They're all there with stupid grins on their face. They're happy. They're enjoying themselves, except one guy. One guy. He has that look on his face that he knows that he doesn't belong. It's kind of dejected. It's kind of sad. It's kind of that look that says, I've been had. I've been hoodwinked, bamboozled. What do I do now? I'm out of options. And that's where Zelensky is. Quite frankly, he's out of options. He's got no options. He worked for his masters, and his masters have said to him, you talk about the ultimate setup. Let's defend Zelensky for 1 second. He's been set up. He's been had. What happened? Now, don't get me wrong. He's not the good guy by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just evaluating this thing. What happened? Zelensky was told, basically, you're the head of this country, so act like the head of the country, but you ain't really. That's your job. You're an actor. You're a servant of the people, right? This counteroffensive, this offensive comes up, and they say, basically, here's what's obvious. We're going to train all your people. So they take these people out and they train them. Then they send them back. We're going to give you the stuff you're going to fight with. So they send tanks and all this stuff. And the Russians blow about half of it up before he even gets to the damn line, contact line. But they send him a bunch of stuff. And during this period of time, because the only thing they're concerned with is the narrative, they constantly, because for propaganda purposes, announce to the Russians what their plans are, where they're going to attack, when they're going to attack, how they're going to attack, what they're going to use. They give the Russians the Russians didn't need spies. They didn't need eavesdropping electronics. The damn neocons told the Russians everything they were going to do. Here's our plan. Here's where we're going to attack. Here's when we're going to attack. Here's how we're going to attack. Here's how many troops we got. Hey, here's the methods of attack they're going to use. And here's the equipment they have, and how many. They gave the Russians everything. The Russians just sat back and took notes. How could they possibly lose? And they said to Zelensky, All right, we're going to handle the offensive. We're going to handle the strategy for the tactics and all of that. You just sit back and wait. And of course, because the neocons are glaringly incompetent lunatics and idiots, this thing flopped and failed. And now here's Zelensky's problem in a nutshell. When you're dealing with criminals, when you're dealing with the mafia, you got to have leverage. You got to have some leverage. He has no leverage. When that offensive failed, that was his last bit of leverage. And the look on Zelensky's face now is, oh crap, oh crap. They have uh, uh, um, set me up. And now they've told him to keep his damn mouth shut. He goes there and he says, look, you guys aren't sending me stuff. And that was his job. And that was his job. He did his job. The Biden people told him, I want you to go around Europe and beg, hat in hand, and beg for stuff. Beg, beg, beg. And we also want you to chastise anybody who doesn't give you what they want. So he did what he was told. He begged, he chastised, he begged. And he goes to here, NATO, and he begged and chastised. But the problem was, he could beg and chastise as long as he had some leverage. So it was like, hey, look, I'm going to go chastise again. And they're like, well, the Ukraine offensive has totally and completely disastrously flopped. Now he could have very easy threw it back in their face and said, but it was your offensive. You armed them, you trained them, you told them what to do. But of course, right off the bat, they'd have said, it don't matter, brother. You still got you're screwed. And yeah, it was our fault, but that ain't going to help you now because you got no leverage. And in this game, this is a game of leverage. The Russians got leverage. They got lots of leverage. The Europeans still need a lot of stuff from the Russians. They still need stuff that the Russian has. No matter what happens, when this is over, the Russians have stuff that they need. The Russians have power. They got leverage on the international scale. They have friends. They have a diplomatic corps that's very powerful, that's gone around the world, that has helped to solidify their coalition. Africa, Middle East, Latin America. The Russians got leverage before, after. You know what? The neocons at some point are going to have to deal with the Russians. You know why? Because the Russians have leverage. They got the Chinese, their best of friends, best buddies, bosom pals, right? They got leverage. The problem in this, if you sum all of this up with Zelensky, his problem is he's out of leverage. He's got nothing. And that's the look on his face when you're standing in a room full of mafioso, because look, that's who these people are. They're mafia. They go around the world and they steal people's stuff. They overthrow governments. They murder people. That's mafia. And Zelensky knows who they are. He's sitting in there in that room with a pit of vipers with smiles on their faces. And he's got nothing to protect himself. He's got nothing to hold, no leverage to hold these people over. And now they're done with him. And so now, as I said a couple of weeks ago, you guys know who watched it, I said, in a chess game, when you look at that board and both sides say 2 moves, 3 moves, 4 max, it's over. If I go here, you're going to go there. That means I can only go here, here, or here. Any of those moves I make, you go past me, boom, I'm done. Right? So once you look at that chessboard and you see that there's no way out, 3 moves, 4 moves, and this thing is over, you might as well clean the chessboard and start over. The game is effectively over. Those last 3 moves aren't really moves. They're just performative. You're looking at it, and when you can see, you can count the moves. 4 moves and it's over. 3 moves and it's over. You might as well just say checkmate at that point. There's no point in going through it. Start over again. Any game that you're playing, when it is obvious that of the outcome, the game is effectively over. You just, anything after that is performative. At this point, look at this guy's face one more time. I got to keep showing this picture because it makes my point for it. Look at this guy's face. Look at that. That face says the game is over. I realize that everybody in this here is friends. There's 2 groups here. One group only has 1 person in it, and I'm in that group. And they told me to wear this. He has that look on his face like, they told me to wear this outfit. And when I said to them, but the pants don't fit. They said, that's okay. They're fine. Just wear them. When I said to them, why does everybody else have on Allen Edmonds shoes? And I got to wear these Brogans. They were issued from the quartermaster's office. They said, oh, they look good. It helps you play the part. When he said, but the pants are too long and they're all wrinkly at the bottom. They sent him a picture of Tony Blinken and said, look at Tony Blinken. You look just like a Secretary of State. It's a regal look. We're going with it right now. And the best way to do it is one leg longer than the other. I'm telling you, man, you and Tony Blinken, we'll put you side by side. And so now he's there with issued drab olive khakis. And look at those shoes at a meeting where everyone else has on Hickey Freeman and Brooks Brothers and Valentino, on and on and on. You got on a janitor's uniform, which means you're out of leverage, buddy. You're out of leverage. So now the look on his face knows, I know I'm out of leverage. He knows at any point they may grab him by the back of his freaking neck and drag him out back. And he ain't coming back to the front. That he's looking around. You know what he's doing? He's looking around for flowers. He's looking around saying, are there any flowers here? Because I got a funny feeling somebody's going to direct me to gaze at the flowers. And I don't want to look at the flowers. Whatever I do, I don't want to look at the flowers. And he knows he's at that moment. So what's happening now is this. In a country like Ukraine, it's a pit of vipers also. What's hell's going to happen when he goes back to Kiev? What's his inner circle going to do? They understand. You think his inner circle is not on Twitter? You think they're not looking at these pictures? You think the people, if you're the leader of a country, if you're a powerful person, there's always people around you who want to take your power, who want to replace you. They're looking at that picture. They're looking at the humiliation and degradation on his sad, pathetic face, and they're seeing weakness. And there's people around him, some who may or may not have a copy of Mein Kampf very close to them, who are looking at it saying, oh, this boy's weak now. He ain't nothing but a shoe-shine boy, a boot black, as they used to say in Old England. He's done. So now they're plotting on it. I don't see how he can last long because I guarantee the people in his inner circle are plotting on him. Now they're calling the neocons. They're calling Biden. Hey, Biden, yeah, we see this boy's done. He's finished. He's of no value to you. He's weak. He's soft. He's got nothing. Look at him. Tell you what, we'll take care of him for you. Things happen. It's a dangerous world. We've had helicopter accidents here. We got missiles landing. We got all kind of terrible things happening. He could slip and fall down an elevator shaft on a bullet. Who knows what could happen? We're just saying, Biden, we got some flowers out back. We're just throwing that out to you, Joe Biden. We got flowers. Maybe you don't have to ask him to look at the flowers. Maybe we could handle that part of the deal. And as a result, our boy Adolf here can then be in charge and we can move forward. The problem that the neocons have is that when and if he leaves, the person that's likely to supplant him, shall we say, is going to be somebody who is one of the fascists, one of the far right. It's going to be somebody who would not in any way, shape, or form be amenable to a deal with the Russians. So I know we're talking past Zelensky, but if you look at that picture, there's not, the Zelensky is done. His role as an actor, he played it valiantly, but the curtain is closing on the Servant of the People show. The series will soon be canceled. I don't know how much longer this guy will be able to visit us on this earthly plane. Not saying I want anything bad to happen to him. I don't want anything bad to happen to anybody. I'm just saying that if I was Zelensky, I'd be, if he's got a priest, maybe he could go to talk and, get it all out and look over his life, maybe good things that have happened, bad things that have happened, try to figure out if it's all worth it. What's it all mean? Why are we here? It's that time, Zelensky. You need to start contemplating those universal truths and realities because you're soon, I suspect, to join your ancestors. And I don't mean in Lvov. I mean in Valhalla or wherever the hell the Nazis think they go to. That's the direction this bastard's heading. Unfortunately, I think he should be held accountable. Well, you know what? Not held accountable. Let me take a different tack. I think that Zelensky should be set completely free. Here's what I mean. If Zelensky wanted to live and survive, his out would be to try to make his way to Moscow. Really, really. His out would be to contact the Russians and say, look, guys, these people have asked me to go take a gander at the flowers. I don't want to go look at the flowers. Can you help me out here? Now, the Russians may not, but knowing the practicality of the Russians that I do, they would say, WIIFM, what's in it for me? And all he would have to say is, I know where the bodies are buried. They're buried out by the flowers, and I don't want to join them. Can I come? I'll talk. And the Russians, no doubt, knowing the practicality of the Russians, and if I were in charge of Russia, I'd say, yeah, we'll send somebody to pick you up. We'll bring you back to Moscow, and you can tell us everything you know, and then we'll strike a deal where nothing happens to you. And if I were the Russians, I'd give them that deal. I'd give him that deal. Yeah, he's been involved in all kind of terrible things, but the value of what he knows is far greater than punishing him for anything. So I'd obviously say, if I'm the Russians, you talk and you walk. We'll keep you right here in Moscow. And, maybe you can find a way to slip your ill-gotten gains into our, we'll help you that, or maybe give them a price. Here's what we'll do. We'll give you 10 million rubles. You can live off. Sure, it isn't the $400 million that you pilfered off of U.S. Money going to Ukraine. Fair enough. But your other option is to look at the flowers. And if I'm him, I'm like 10 million rubles or look at the flowers. I'm taking the rubles. If I was Zelensky, I'd go to Moscow. It beats looking at the flowers. He goes to Moscow. He tells them everything. He spills the beans, and he can live. If I'm Zelensky, that's what I do. Because right now, here's the thing. Think about what I said. Because his leverage, the leverage that Zelensky has is not with the neocons. In fact, it's the opposite. As far as the neocons are concerned, he's a liability. The leverage that he has is with the Russians. The leverage that he has is with the Eurasian coalition, where he can go squeal like on NATO. He can talk on NATO. He can say all the insider things. He can do a video presentation to go to the UN about everything he knows about the Nord Stream blast and the Zaporozhye shelling and the shelling of everything. He can really put these people on blast, right? So he can live if he goes to the Russians and does that. But the problem that he has, that obviously circles us around back to the beginning. Because that potential is there, because his only leverage is with the Russians, and his leverage would be used to expose the neocons, the neocons can't afford for that to happen, can they? They can't take that chance. So as things get more difficult, it won't surprise me if either one of two things are happening. I think they're threatening him right now. They're reminding him that it's a very dangerous world, and that there's missiles flying all over the place, and it would be a shame if something happened that he were to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and a missile were to explode near him and he would be torn to shreds. So I'm sure they're reminding him the danger that he faces, and they don't have to remind him. He already knows, but I'm sure. I guarantee you that the neocons are meeting with the people around him anymore. More and more. They ain't meeting with him that much. They're meeting with the people around him because they're plotting on him, and they're planning on him, and they're scheming on him. And now he doesn't have any leverage to stop him. And now basically, what happens? NATO has said, we're kind of running out of stuff. I've heard this, that, and you've probably read it too, that apparently NATO has somehow said to, and we've read it, it was pretty much out in the open, to Zelensky et al. Apparently they've said to him, look, you got till November, December, something like that. You got to the first of the year. If you can't do the impossible, if you can't break through the lines, and we know you can't. If you can't defeat the Russians, take some towns, get to Crimea, and we know you can't. If you can't do that by then it's going to be time. We're not going to be able to do much for you anymore. We're not going to be able, we're going to start running out of ammo. We're already out. You're going to run out of support. And it's behind the scenes, you're running out of support. It's going to come to the forefront. We're going to let you go. We're going to drop you. You're going to be on your own, at which point he's got to either run to the Russians or look at the flowers. So I think the message is coming to Zelensky and the Ukrainians. You have served your purpose. Thanks a lot, but we're looking at the numbers, and this is the way they're looking at it. We only got enough Ukrainian bodies to last until December. That's really the way they look at it. How we fixed on Ukrainians? Well, I think we'll be out of Ukrainians somewhere around November, December. There you go. That's the time we're going to give Zelensky. We're going to run out of Ukrainians then. Hey, Zelensky, yeah, we got how many? We got X amount of thousands of Ukrainians. By our calculations, they're dying at 500 a day, and it looks like we'll be out by the end of the year. And at that point, you got to do something. We ain't gonna keep giving you our stuff, and we're not going to keep, going through all of this. This is very inconvenient for us. We'll drop you like a damn hot balloon and lead balloon, and we ain't protecting you anymore. You know, the SAS guys that are going around Kiev protecting you from the Nazis. Yeah, well, they got to come home. And at that point, figure this thing out. Bottom line, figure this thing out. Oh, by the way, if you so much as breathe wrong, you get a free trip to the flower garden. So keep that in the back of your mind too. So there we are. This the bookend NATO summits, Bucharest, April 2008, Georgia, Ukraine. You are going to be allowed into NATO. A couple months later, Georgia gets slapped down by the Russians. Now, a few years later, Ukraine gets slapped down by the Russians. The neocons didn't help Georgia, and they ain't going to help Ukraine. They're going to leave them. And this has been my position all along. They ain't dying. Not one American life is going to be lost. I mean, yeah, they'll send the mercenaries. We don't give a damn about them. They're friggin' idiots. So they're just going to be like, hey, do we have anybody stupid enough to go into a war zone for $1,000 a day or something? And these mercenaries, yeah, good way to go there, Charlie. We'll put you on a plane. We're sending you there. And of course, the mercenaries, they go in a building somewhere in Western Ukraine, and the Russians send a couple missiles and send a bunch of them to Valhalla. Then the ones that get to the front, they get ripped apart by shrapnel, and some of them who survive come back and tell their story and say, holy sweet mother of God, this is no place to be. The Russians are throwing artillery at you day and night. And those of us who watch this are like, oh yeah, that's shocking. You thought something different was going to happen in a war with the Russians? You thought, what'd you think they were going to do? Throw Nerf balls at you? Throw Nerf artillery at you that it would explode and little spongy things would hit you? No, that ain't what they do. That's not how it works. This ain't Afghanistan. This ain't Syria. You're not dealing with a weaker military. You're dealing with the Russians, and they ain't friendly. They ain't in a good mood, and they're going to send you back in a body bag if there's any way you can do it. So the whole mercenary thing's falling apart. It's all falling apart. It's all doing what it does. And now we're in the Afghan debacle, where certainly the U.S. should have left Afghanistan. They had no right there in the illegal occupation of Afghanistan. But when they left, the reason it was such a debacle when Biden team left is because they didn't have any time, because they didn't say, let's negotiate with the Taliban and they'll let us leave. Instead, they left when the Taliban was overrunning all of the positions. They trained, how about this? They trained and armed the Afghan army, right? Trained them, armed them, paid them. When the Taliban came, the Afghan army did what trained and paid mercenaries do. They dropped their damn arms and ran for their friggin' lives, and all of their positions got overrun. So when the U.S. was leaving, it was when all the positions of their proxies were being overrun, so they had no time. They had to get the hell out with their tail between their legs as the Taliban were closing in on them, as this thing was falling apart. That's how it works. That's why people are hanging off the fuselage of a C-130, right? So now what's going on? What happened in Afghanistan? There's a word that I've been using for many, many, many months. Collapse. The Afghan project collapsed. And guess what's going on here? This thing is going to collapse. I've been saying this thing. I'm not blowing my own horn, but I think it was obvious to a lot of people that no, the Americans ain't going in. No, the Russians weren't doing some big arrow offensive where they could lose a lot of people. No, they're chipping away at something. Chip away at the foundation of the house. And at some point, the house collapses. And the house is in collapse right now. And the Russians are sitting back there, and people are like, well, why don't the Russians make their move? They don't need to. They got no move to make. Or they got to sit back and watch it collapse. Once you plant the explosives around the building and sit back, you watch the building. You don't go back in the building or near the building. You push down on the plunger, the explosives around the bottom of the building blow, and the building just drops and collapses, right? That's what the Russians have done. Planting the explosives, blowing the explosives, and they're sitting back at a safe distance, watching this thing collapse. I mean, why do they, what they're doing too is they're charging into certain towns. They're punching away. They're just body punching away. They're going to take a town here. They're going to take what's there, kind of like sports. You know what I mean? Take what your opponent gives you. They're taking what's presented to them. If something's weak in an area, they'll punch at it. Something's weak in an area, they'll punch at it. They'll take it, right? But they don't need to send 50,000, 100,000 Russians dashing across the line to charge into the lines of like pickets charge into the lines of the Ukrainians. They have no, because what they're seeing is this: behind the Ukrainian lines, behind the Ukrainian military comes the Ukrainian political structure, and behind the Ukrainian political structure comes the NATO, the American political structure, and they're watching the political structures fall apart, lose their zeal for this war, and so they don't have to punch the front part of it because the back of it's falling apart. It's collapsing from the back in, and so at some point, this dysfunction at the political level of NATO moves into the political level of Ukraine, and then moves into the military level of Ukraine, and this thing just falls apart. I don't think at some point, when there's no leadership left in militarily, and there's no leadership left politically in Ukraine, that the people on the front lines are going to keep fighting. What are they fighting for? What are they fighting for now? They're fighting a war they can't possibly lose. They're going into a battle that they're about 99% chance of going to die. What's going on here? And what's the plan? Is NATO going to say we're going to do another big offensive in the fall? Last year they did their big offensive in the fall. So are they going to say, come the fall, we're setting up for another big offensive? What's the point now? Everybody already knows how their next big offensive is going to end. The same way this big offensive is going to end. And if you say that, then the Russians just got to dig some more trenches and lay back and bring some more ammo to the front and say, okay, let us know. September 15th, we'll be ready. We'll be there. Send them back into the minefields, and we'll clean this situation up for you. That's where we are. And so Zelensky's got nothing left. He has, and the key, if you take nothing else from this video, it's this: in international affairs, you have to have leverage. Think of Erdogan. One thing you got to give Erdogan: is he a prince? No, the guy's looking out for numero uno, but he's got leverage. He knows how to use his leverage. He's got a bunch of immigrants on the border, like a couple million immigrants that he could unleash at any given time into the EU. So the EU ain't going to touch him because he could slam them with immigration, with the immigrant issue. He's in NATO. He's the second largest land army in NATO. It would be a humiliation for NATO. NATO would be in trouble if he left. So NATO needs him to stay in NATO. He's got leverage. He uses it. NATO wants him to do things. Let Sweden in, this person, or whatever, right? He's got leverage. He's going to use that leverage. The Russians need him. They need him as kind of part of their part of their coalition. And the fact that he's in NATO is beneficial to the Russians to have him as a partner. So he's got leverage when it comes to Russia, and he's going to use it. Look, you can't hate on a man for understanding the issue of leverage in a very dangerous world. He's got neocons all around him, right? They tried to overthrow him in his own government. So Erdogan uses, I'm not saying I agree with what he does, but I'm just saying I understand that the issue of leverage on the geopolitical scale and how it's used. And Erdogan clearly does too. He's nobody's idiot, and he's going to use his leverage, and everybody that deals with him knows it, right? I mean, people are angry because he sent a handful of neo-Nazis back. Realistically, the Russians may say, we're pissed. But the truth about it is this: it doesn't really have a practical effect on the battlefield. What are these handful of neo-Nazis that he sent back? What are they going to do? What are they going to? Are they going to jump back into the fight? The Russians would probably be happy if they do. Yeah, send them back in the fight. We didn't kill them the first time. Put them back on there. This time we won't miss. This time they won't be taken prisoners. They'll be rattled full of holes with a machine gun. So the Russians are like, yeah, throw him back in the fight. We didn't kill him the first time, but we'll make sure we handle this. They won't go back to Turkey and be used as leverage again. Okay. So these neo-Nazis going back to Ukraine, it's an inconvenience. It's a info war inconvenience for the Russians, but the Russians understand that this guy had leverage. He used that leverage to get what he wanted. He's a survivor, and he'll piss the Russians off. But when they need something from Turkey again, one thing they do understand that he'll make deals. Now, you got to get what you get out of him now, because the deal that you make with him is leverage, and he'll use that deal as leverage for the next deal with the neocons. But the Russians already understand that. They understand that they're going to get what they get out of him now, and they'll take it. Bottom line. So that's where Erdogan is, and that's my thoughts on him. It's not to praise him. It's not to hate him. It's to say, I understand how this machine works, man, and it's dangerous. And Erdogan understands how it works, and he's going to get what he can get out of it, and I don't hate him for it. He's not a prince, but I understand it, and the Russians don't really hate him for it. They know who the hell he is. They're practical. They're on an international stage, and they're playing this game. He's playing the game. Everybody's playing the game. But Zelensky ain't playing the game anymore. He is out. And watch this guy. Things are dangerous for him. All right, let's look. Because we probably have some super chats. And we usually get some good questions from the super chats. Sparky says, make Russia Ukraine again. Yeah, Sparky's always got something good to say. How about this? Liam Barrett says, Garland, love your shoe shine boy meme and think you've captured the essence of who Zelensky is. Love your truth telling. Liam in Dublin. Thanks, Liam. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? He's just a shoe shine boy. He's just a shoe shine boy. Nothing more, nothing less. That's all he's ever been. Andrea says, much love from the UK, Garland. Love your work. Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, that's it. The man, come on. That's him. Look at that outfit he's got on. There's no need to fear. Underdog is here. Although he carries himself in a cartoonish way, I don't think that shoeshine boy Zelensky would turn into a superhero. No, those days are gone. They tried to make him look like a superhero, and now he's just a wrinkly, olive drab suit, brogan-clad janitor. Nothing more, nothing less. Valley S. Hey, Valley S. Love Valley S. Thanks for the super sticker, Valley S. Forgot where Valley S is. Ohio, maybe? Or Chicken Patty, I think it's in Ohio. I never know. Okay, mop and bucket are a brilliant addition to the picture. You're exactly right. And you know the thing about when you look at that picture, it's perfection. It really works. A different perspective says, Ukraine fighting same way as in Afghanistan. Take village, can't push forward to sustain it or stop incoming. But without air cover, dope show, Stephen A. That's funny. Thanks. Yeah, that's similar. They're just playing the same thing over again. The same game plays itself out over and over again. Sparky says, Zelensky's like Lenny in Of Mice and Men. George, tell me again about the rabbits. Man, we're getting a lot of sniggles off of our boy Zelensky at on his let me see. Anybody else? Rob Juno says, how do you see the next year in USA, Garland? I'll say this. The USA is going to move in the direction of the 2024 election. That's where I think the focus is going to move. And I think that the neocons are very, very frightened and concerned about the 2024 election, and they're going to focus. So that's going to be the focus in the next year. It's going to drift away from Ukraine. I see the neocons backing off of their rhetoric on China. They're going to still try to build the missile bases and all the things around China to threaten it physically. But I think going into 2024, I think they recognize that people are wary of war, and they're going to pretend like we're not the warmongers when it comes to China. We want to make friends with China. We want to be okay with China. So they're going to back down rhetorically. They're going to back off of China. However, they're going to keep doing what they're going to lie. Oh, no, we love China. We're the best of friends. We're going to solve this thing as in a manner where no violence is necessary. That's the rhetoric you're going to hear, but they're going to keep trying to do the physical things in the Pacific region to threaten China. So that's it. They know they're going to start changing their rhetoric to the campaign to the election year rhetoric. That's what we're going to see. someone says, I wish I could share Garland's optimism about China. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're going to stop their crusade against China. I'm saying that what they're doing is they understand that in an election year that arguing for more war ain't the way to get elected, particularly when you got a bunch of people. You got a RFK Jr., you got a Trump, and you've got a Cornel West who are pushing back against the neocons. They understand that ain't popular. So they will change. As I said, keep in mind, they're going to keep doing all the things they're doing, building their bases, trying to get a coalition of countries, trying to bring the poisonous NATO to the Pacific region so that they can lie to the people. Basically, in a nutshell, they want to do what they got Zelensky to do. Zelensky ran on a peace ticket, and once he got in, he did a 180, right? Or as Annalena Baerbock would say, a 360. They want to run not on a peace ticket, but they do want to run on no, we don't want another war with China like we had with Russia. They'll run, we're backing off on China. We're going to be friends. They're going to back down off of that only rhetorically, not in the physical sphere, not in the things that they do. They'll keep preparing for war with China as they say that they're not. They're going to use that because that's just election lies and rhetoric. That's what I'm saying. So I'm not, what's the term? I'm not optimistic about the U.S. neocons' position to their inclination towards war with China. I do believe that we will see Russia and China make it more clear and obvious. That's what we're going to see. They're going to make it more clear and more obvious that if you go to war with Russia, you go to war with China. If you go to war with China, you go to war with Russia. I think that's what we're going to see. Sparky says, get your shine box. That's it. Get your shine box. Can't you just see Zelensky standing on the corner? Shoe shine, shoe shine. Get your shoe shine right here. Get your shoe shine here. Cornel West, Matthew Hogue, 2024. There you go. Love them both. Before I go, let's take one more look. I think it's imperative that on the way out, we end with our boy Zelensky. That's it. Mop bucket. Mop. It's perfect. You know, whoever this was great because I like the way that, look at that. They put the mop bucket behind. They put him in front of the mop bucket. So it's behind his little tan Brogan shoes. He has a shirt. Look at his shirt, not tucked in. He's just just an ugly situation. And everybody else is smiling. You know why they're smiling? Because they don't give a crap about Ukraine. I mean, think about this. Ukraine's losing like 5, 6, 7, 800 people a day in this so-called offensive, right? And the Ukrainians are, they got their smile turned upside down. And these people, look at it. The look at the smiles on their faces. The European people are suffering economically. Europe's economy is going down the drain. And look at the ruling elite of Europe, just as happy as can be. They know they're eating well. They know they're riding in planes that we all pay for. They're riding around in their government planes paid for by the people. They're wearing suits and all. Most of them are already rich through parents and grandparents and old money. So they're all sitting there living good. They ain't worried about a thing. They're happy. In fact, the European people should have the same look on their faces that Zelensky has. Look at that look, man. The eyes, the biting of the lip, the biting of the bottom lip. It says, "Oh my God, how the hell did I get into this one?" And he understands. There ain't no way out. No way. Sorry about that, buddy. Any more? No more super chats. Let's take a look at Rockfin. But I'll read something. Gene Whitworth says, remember, Putin stated one of his goals was denazifying Ukraine. That hasn't been done yet. Time won't be on Russia's side much longer. Putin knows that. He doesn't want to let the West rebuild there. Well, I'll say this. Interestingly enough, in order for the West to get a deal, in order for them to get a deal with Ukraine, they're going to have to denazify Ukraine. In order for them to make any kind of deals, they're going to have the kind of government in Ukraine willing to accept the deal. The Nazis ain't willing to accept the deal. They'll fight to the last person. They'll fight all the way in. Remember, at the end of World War II, as Germany was falling, Hitler said, you know what, the German people should all pick up guns. They should all fight. And if they don't and they all die, well, then they weren't good Germans. Basically, at some point, Hitler threw all of the German people under the bus and said, you all fight and you all die. Everybody die. When it comes to the end with the Nazis, their concern, their thing is we should all fight to the death. There should be none of us left. We'll all gloriously and valiantly go to Valhalla. That is the Nazi way. That is the extremist way of looking at everything. And so when and if the neocons say to them, we need a deal, a bargain in, they're going to say, no, 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 we're going to fight to the end. And they're going to say, no, you got to have a bargain. And they're going to say, we ain't even listen to you anyway. We're going to do what we want. And the neocons are going to say, we're not going to give you any ammo or anything. And the Nazis will say, well, then we'll fight them with our bare hands. They're orcs. They're inferior. It doesn't matter. We'll beat them. We'll fight them with shovels because we'll win because they're so inferior. They're not even humans. So in order to get a deal, the neocons are going to have to denazify that government. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to get out of this either. So that's another great irony here. Thanks a lot, you all. That's why Putin needs to drop a nuke. Well, first of all, let me say this. Why would you drop a nuke when you're border? You drop a nuke and all of this nuclear ash comes up and then the wind blows back and you just nuked yourself. Probably not a good idea. I'm just going to throw that out there. All right. Thanks a lot. You all. Peace. I'm out of here. Oh, by the way, I forgot. You see everything. I got my Cash App information there. Buymeacoffee.com is always great. Buy me a coffee. You can go there and it just says buy Garland a coffee for $5 or how many do you want? And of course you can do that. You can do like the subscription and just say, I want to buy Garland a coffee once a month, and every month it'll be $5, kind of like the Patreon thing. So buy me a coffee is great. Patreon.com. You all understand that. PayPal's an option, and follow me on Telegram. And of course, go to my Rockfin channel, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. Become a member in case they throw me off of YouTube. And it doesn't cost anything to become a member. You can see everything there with no advertisements. If in fact you can afford it, please subscribe to my Rockfin channel. That's $14.99 a month. Join up for a year. It's only $12.40 a month. Because they give you a couple months free. If you can afford it, I would certainly appreciate anybody that could do that to support my Rockfin channel. Thanks a lot, everybody. If you can't, just any way you look at it, save everything. Share everything on all your social media platforms. Peace. I'm out.